Welcome to the A.R. Bernard Show. I'm your host, A.R. Bernard. And I'm delighted that you decided to join me for what I think will be an empowering conversation. You let me know after you take a listen. My guest today, Courtney B. Vance, Harvard graduate, Yale School of what? Performing Arts? Am I getting that right?
Drama, Yale School of Drama.
Yale. And married to Angela Bassett. And two incredible children, twins, who are now graduating from high school, and a faith journey. And often people don't know about the faith journey of many of our successful, and I would count you and Angela as successful, Hollywood celebrities who have been able to balance home, family, work, and faith, man. Let's begin there, Courtney. Let's talk about your faith journey. How did you come to faith?
My family we were raised in and out of the church, but in the church enough for me to realize I was missing something when we weren't going. And I remember coming home from college, I believe it was, maybe freshman year, something, and I was going over to Hartford Baptist. I forget the pastor's name. Adam, I can't get it. Pastor Adams, I can't get it, but somebody will Google and find out. This is around 79, 80, something like that. And I remember going to his church, sitting in there, and the altar call, and I was on my way up, and then I couldn't do it, and I left. And I told my father, and he said, "You'll come to it, Court. It'll come to you." But so I was looking. I was searching for it. I was searching for my Jesus, and but was looking at everything. You go to a wonderful liberal arts college like Harvard, and they're into all kinds of things over there, and it's all wonderful. The search is on for me. And then, I just, I felt something was missing, in my life. And I'm going through all the things that, I've been detailed in books and discussions about my life and my father's suicide and my therapies. And then, Preacher's Wife came along.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, I'm not getting in that pulpit unless I'm saved. And so I was in New York, and I went to Abyssinian, Reverend Calvin Butts, God rest his soul, and gave my life to Christ. And that's why that Abyssinian will always mean so much to me. And so that was my beginning, and we did Preacher's Wife, and Angela and I found our way together during that time, and at the premiere opening of Preacher's Wife in New York, I proposed to her. So the whole journey, came together through giving my life to Christ, and everything happened after that.
So you're attributing, of course, Angela showing up as part of your spiritual journey and God's
Absolutely.
gift.
Absolutely.
All right.
And getting me ready, Pastor.
What was that?
Getting me ready for Angela. I had to get myself ready for her, and I wasn't ready. So that was part of my journey, getting myself ready for the different transitions and the different phases that God has for me.
Well, faith doesn't always translate smoothly into real life, especially in Hollywood. What have been the challenges with that?
Well, you have to, specifically, you always have to weigh your faith against, if you're blessed enough to work, roles that may be contrary to your faith. And so there have been times when I've had to turn down roles because everything is not for me. I've come to find out, and it's okay. I mean, someone will do it,
Yeah,
But
but
Angela,
yeah, not necessarily you. But it's good to hear that the values and standards that come from your faith informs even your choices when it comes to work.
absolutely,
Everyone says
absolutely.
not everyone lives by it.
Absolutely. Well, you know that's that's the recognition that the most important thing in our lives are our faith.
Mhm.
That we recognize that ultimately that's all we have. And as my mother transitioned, and the last words she didn't speak because she had ALS and she couldn't speak anymore. But the last words she wrote down and gave to us, last word she gave to us was pray.
Hmm.
And she said, basically, she was saying, life is a prayer. When our children go, you know, initially they were up underneath us, as we all know, and we could put our hands on them and, you know, come over here, give me your hand, walk across the street. But eventually, the hands, then they take their hands out of our hands, and life at that point is really all about prayer.
Well, it's not,
So, you know,
yeah, because you're candid in terms of your family, the experience with
mm,
your dad, uh,
mm,
his suicide.
mm,
You talked about it in the book. You also talked about the vulnerability that it requires of Black men to be open to address issues of mental health and trauma.
mm,
Let's start with your dad, if that's okay.
mm.
Walk us through that experience.
My father was the center of our family, definitely the center of my life. He was very, very smart, could talk on any subject, could converse, was could do just about anything, could fix anything. So I was in complete awe of him. He didn't. He would fix the cars, and so I knew all the tools. And when he asked for something, I knew where it was. I knew what it was. I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew what it. I go get it, and boom, there you go. There, give me the Phillips. Boom. So you know, I was ready. But he never really showed me, you know, how to fix things. So I, you know, that. But that's okay. You know, our parents do the best they can. And you know, he would be the person to counsel someone about not, you know, taking your life. He was there for everyone. He worked at initially he was at the first supermarket, quote unquote, in Detroit. We grew up in Detroit. The Bilo is what it was called, and he was a manager of the Bilo store supermarket. And then when the riots happened, 67 riots happened, they burned down the store. So he had to pivot and, you know, started working. It was a foreman on the line at Chrysler, and then finally worked his way up into benefits at Chrysler. So he was in charge of this particular time around about, I believe he was hoping that Chrysler would go under so that he could get his benefits, take care of the family, and segue into doing something he wanted to do, which is probably become a lawyer. But, you know, Lee Iacocca and his crew saved the company, and he went back into what he was doing, which was he had tasked with taking a plant, firing 3,000 people from a plant, and rehiring 3,000 other people to take their place. And then I think in the midst of that, he got wind that Chrysler was going to let him go, and I think that was the end of it for him. But you know, he was a foster child, so um, um, he was he didn't know his mother, nor did he want to know. My mother said they were in Chicago. He's from Chicago. They were driving somewhere in Chicago, and he thought he recognized some building or something. She wanted to stop. He said no, 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 and they kept going. So ultimately, you know, he went in for my sister and I. We knew we were loved. We knew if things got rough, we knew our mother and father loved us because they showed us and they were there for us. At base Corps, he didn't believe that. He didn't know that. So when things got rough, he had nowhere to turn. And at the end of his when he got to the end of his rope, he gave up. And you get at the end of your hope, you look up, but he gave up. And so my wife and I ended up, years later after he passed away, we ended up doing Skip Gates' Finding Your Roots.
Mm-hmm.
And turns out his side of the family, the Vance side of the family, saw those episodes, and they tracked us down, my sister and I, and we went to Chicago and met the family, cried, laughed, ate, and they were telling us stories about, chiefly about his mother, Idala, Ardella.
Mm-hmm.
They were telling us about Ardella, and Ardella was a short lady, and she was abused, sexually abused. She had 6 stillbirths by the time she was 15.
Mm-hmm.
But she had my father's older brother at 15, and then had my father at 17, and then they sent her down. She lost her mind, and they sent her back down to Arkansas. As you know, we did back in the day, and but they when she came back and she was with the family, she was always, periodically she would say, "Where's my boy? They took my boy. Where's my boy?" And they were like, they didn't know what she was referring to, and so, but who she was referring to was Conroy, my father. So he thought that he was not loved, that he had been cast away into a foster home. They put him in a foster home because the oldest son, Larry, Ardella's sister, took her in and took him in, and he didn't know that wasn't his mother till he was 18, 20, something like that. That's how it went back in the day. But there was no other relatives to take in my father, so they put him in a foster home, sent her down, and did that to the 2 sons. But if he could have just held on, he would have found out that his mama was looking for him. To the day she died, she was looking for him and crying out for him.
Was he a person of faith?
Our father?
Yeah.
No,
No.
I don't think so. I don't think he was.
That you discovered. But, you talk about it freely. Millennials have done a great job removing the stigma associated with mental health. Black men, we still struggle with that. We are not as liberated as we should be based upon the times that we're in. But you're quite comfortable. I have to ask you the big question, because there's so many different ideas, beliefs around suicide and the Christian faith. How did you reconcile that with your faith?
When it happened, my grandfather and my uncles took me aside and said, "You're going to hear a lot of stuff about your father. Just know he was a very brave and courageous man. He did the best he could." I mean, and that's ultimately that I've come to see that, based on, my father, did the best he could with what he had and where he came from, his father, and so when you actually go back, I did C.L. Franklin, played C.L. Franklin, and who was Aretha's father, and Genius Aretha.
Mm-hmm.
And he fathered a child when out from a 12-year-old. He had relations with a 12-year-old, and she had a child. And there's talk of potentially that Aretha's child that she had when she was 12 and 15 were potentially his children. And people say, "How can you play a character like that? How can you?" I said, "You know what? Based on where those people came from, when excusing none of it, but there were no therapists back in the day for us. There's no people to help us transition, and folks, of course, did the best they could. And who were the folks that suffered the most during those time periods? Black women and Black children."
Mm-hmm.
And so he, I in my mind, I just know that my father did the best he could. Now, if he had some of the advantages that I had, And if he had had a mother at the time, like my mother, my sister's mother, who took us aside after we finished getting her affairs in order after a month of being home in Detroit and getting Mama Leslie's affairs in order, just before she left, she pulled us aside and said, "Now look here, we're gonna stop this right now. This is not going no further." Now, when you go back to Courtney, you go back to New York, and Ceci, when you go back to Maryland, D.C. area, and I'm here in Detroit, each of us are going to find a therapist, and we're going to talk this through. This stops right now. So when you go back, find somebody professionally to talk to and get to wholeness. And what a mother.
Yeah.
What a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
How I mean, if she hadn't challenged us each to do that, we wouldn't have done it.
Right. Right.
And I don't know where I would have been, Pastor. I don't know where I'd be. I don't think I'd be where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I didn't have any guidance. I was adrift.
Right. Right. The role of faith, the role of our parents, we can't understate that, especially as a Black family. But it leads to another conversation about identity. Reality is that our nation, not only our nation, but around the world, but especially in America, we are in an identity crisis. Let's talk about male identity, Black male identity. What does it mean to you to be a Black man in America?
It means everything. It means struggle. It means overcoming. It means courage. It means doing more than our share in order to be seen as half the man or the woman that other folks see us as. It means that we're not going to stop. If our relatives could do what they did, if our relatives and our ancestors, if Marian Anderson could, how dare she dream to be and become an opera singer back in the 1910s and 20s? How dare the church raise money for her to go to Germany to learn how to speak German in order to come back and sing and not be able to sing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial? How dare she? How dare any of our people, do what they did with nothing? Everywhere was a no. So I see us as the ultimate survivors. I see us as the ultimate overcomers, because we can't hide. White folks can find themselves into, when people came here to this country, in Ellis Island and all, the pact that they made as they began to change their names from whatever Kirk Douglas's Eastern European Jewish name was to Kirk Douglas, they were able to fold themselves into the society. That's the pact they made, that they may have come here as Irish and Italian and Polish and German, but the pact was they became white. We can't do that. There is no pact we can make. And we've had to forge our way out of no way, and become the people, the great people that we are, and the great people that we continue to be, and will continue to become, on just our faith and our will, and being able to go, okay, that's where it is now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The question is, does being vulnerable and transparent take away from our masculinity? Because, we were taught, suck it up, don't cry, be a man. Those are kind of things that we were told. So we could not afford to be vulnerable, to be transparent. Yet, we're learning that there's strength in that. Speak to that for me.
And we also know that you look at the diabetes and the prostate cancer and the breast cancer and the hypertension, and you look at all those things of sucking it up. And then we look at our Bible that we all follow, and we see the shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept. So obviously, tears are our superpower, as my co-author, Dr. Robin L. Smith says. The emotions are our superpowers. That's how we cleanse. So Jesus always, after a period of time, he went up to the mountain and got away. and God himself was able to breathe and, spend time with the Father. I mean, those are the things that, I know, what the world says is one thing, but what the Bible says is something else. And we've got to recognize, as, I had to, when the Lord brought me Angela, and I thought that I was ready, and I, sitting on a hospital bed after a nervous breakdown or anxiety attack, whatever you want to call it, and feeling all of a failure as a man. And the Lord, and I heard Angela and our doctor, Dr. William Young, whisper. I heard Dr. William Young whisper to Angela, "There's nothing physically wrong with him, but I know of a great psychologist or psychiatrist." And I heard that, and the Lord said to me, "Are you ready now? Are you ready now?" And I had been fighting, getting in that word. I said, "But I need a word right now. I need to know which way to go." And so when I said, "Baby, take me home, please." And she was, but honey, Dr. Young, I said, I know. Thank you, Dr. Young. But I know what I need to do right now. And so we went home, and I did all the things that I needed to do, and, covered Angela, brought the flowers in the house that she loves, and worked periodically when I was working. And, but any spare time I had, I was in that book. I went cover to cover, a little bit at a time every day. And then when I got to the end of it, I turned it back to the beginning and started again and took notes and did that. Went back and forth and and read it 6 times cover to cover, because I said, I need a word. I need to know how God thinks and how he moves and what he wants me to do and how he wants me to think and move. And so that I would be able to, when things come through, I can take things through the sieve of the word and be able to go, no, or yes, or when we had the children, and people were saying, "Oh man, they're so cute. They should be on the commercials," and that's they need to be children.
Yeah.
So I'm just grateful that I heard, but it took what it took for me to get there, which is why I'm speaking out. Took for a suicide, and it took a nervous breakdown or a severe anxiety attack for me to hear the Lord, because he whispers, as we all know, still small voice. So.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, man. And again, your transparency, your vulnerability, which we need more of that, and what it means to be strong. In my book, because you and I talked a lot as you were preparing to get married, and you wanted to know as much as you could so that you could be as ready as you could be. And we talked about strength and what that means and how a man exemplifies strength. It's not physical macho, but the strength to live out his convictions, the power and strength to be gentle. We understand it differently, and you've lived that out. So I commend you, man. I've learned that when you give people advice, it's advice. When they follow it, it becomes counsel. I'll give them more advice than counsel, because not everybody was willing to take it and act on it. But you did.
Yeah, it's work. I mean, that's one of the things that Dr. Robinell says. She says, we know how to suffer. And when she and I were on your at the church, and we did our session around our book, she talks about that, about just we'll stay in something and suffer our entire lives, even though we know we're not happy. But as soon as someone gives us an advice, or gives us something that can speak to our healing, it's too much work.
Yeah.
And so it's work. One way or the other, you're gonna have to work. It's life is not just fun. Life is, if you live long enough, you're gonna lose somebody, you're gonna lose people, and what you gonna do when you're sitting on the edge of your bed when things just don't go your way? How are you gonna dust yourself off? And how did our relatives, who the pastor everywhere was a no, how did MLK, when they had the Montgomery bus boycott, how did they get 55,000 people doing the same thing for a year and a half? How did they do that? That's what we need to study. How did they keep going, even though it looked so bad every day? There was no light, and still they rose.
Yeah, they believe. Yeah. And it's important for us to continue those conversations because we have a generation of people of color in the United States who have experienced, unprecedented wealth, education, and upward mobility, and yet are removed from the history that gave the opportunities that they now enjoy. So I think it's very, very important to keep the conversation going. Let's talk about Hollywood, man. Hollywood. And not everyone has been able to survive Hollywood. We hear so much about couples and, they're in the mix of that world, that culture, and it's destructive to them individually, personally, and inevitably to their marriage relationship. But there have some who, because of certain principles, values, ideas that they subscribe to and held fast to, have made it. You guys continue to be a model of what it means to be in that context and yet, maintain family, maintain the marriage, maintain respect. So is there a secret or is it simply a way of thinking?
Both.
Okay.
The secret is in that book. I said when I was going through it, I came across 1 Peter 3:7. Live with a woman according to knowledge that she is the weaker vessel, not weaker in terms of strength, but that she is emotional, that your prayers are not hindered. I saw that and I said, whoa, what are you saying, Lord? Are you saying that if I don't care for her emotional life and make sure that she feels safe and secure emotionally, that all the prayers that I have going up about what I would like you to do for me and for our family, they're stopped. I said, got it. The focus is not me. The focus is her. Men, we think, because that's what the world says, that a man is the king and the woman's the queen, and she should be waiting on me hand and foot. And that is not the way it works. What the world thinks is one way, but what the Bible says is that she's the focus is her. The man may be the head, but the woman is the neck, and the head don't go nowhere that the neck don't tell it to go. So we have to I had to refocus my mind. And once I heard that and the Lord spoke to me, I said, got it. Honey, is there anything you need me to do? What can I do? And when I mess up, which I do every day, Pastor, I say, baby, what? I'm sorry. What? Wow, to last night I had to go, baby, I thought I was doing right. I'm so sorry. I messed it up again, didn't I? I messed it up again. Okay, look. This is what I'm going to do. I had to redo it. And I said, nothing's been done. Let's redo this thing so that you are in the mix of it. And she said, okay. That's my life. That's my life.
Man, it is amazing. Karen and I will be celebrating 52 years of marriage, man.
Hallelujah.
And 2 words I've learned: adapt and adjust, and practice those things. But it is so true how a woman responds to the right kind of leadership. I think about the words that says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That's challenging, man. When you think of redemptive love and the patience, the empathy, all that's required for a person to love redemptively, I had to step back and say, I don't know if I could measure up. And we couldn't.
But you can't. And we can't without him.
That's it.
Without him, we can't. We will fail miserably. And I fail. But with him, he says, I can do all things.
Come on,
so that's it. We're outside of him. Yeah. And that's why I said when I had that break, the Lord said, nah, let's go. I'm ready for you. Let's go. Yeah. I've been ready. I've been waiting for this moment. Let's go, Courtney. I was like, got it. Let's go. And because I tried it my way, Pastor. Yeah. And I ended up on a hospital bed. I tried it my way.
Yeah, but you see, we're talking about the practicality of our faith because too often people think it's just some spiritual Sunday thing, or, they get caught up in the ritual and practice and not realize that it's very practical. It is
Look,
something that applies to every aspect of your life.
the honeymoon is over. Once the honeymoon is over, you've got to, how to become one
Yeah.
is a mystery. And you've got to know how to bring, as the man, as the head, be the head and saying, I'm sorry, and meaning it, even though in your spirit, you know you ain't do nothing wrong.
Yeah.
What did I do?
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
gonna sit here and argue with you. I didn't do nothing. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I did. So what? Who's gonna be the bigger person and say I'm sorry and bring us back so we can begin to have a conversation about? So, baby, tell me what I did. You got really angry and started crying. I don't know what I did. Tell me what I did.
Now, you brought up
She,
something there when you said the man is the head,
mm,
because, we are living in an age of equity, equality, and the whole idea of the man being the head of the woman or the head of the household needs to be clarified, because in this age, we're saying, wait a minute, that sounds like something antiquated and removed from where we are today, and our faith needs to make certain adjustments. But when you say the man being the head, you're not talking about a hierarchy of value, because men and women, we're ontologically equal, but different in function, different in roles that we play and we occupy. So when you use the term the man is the head, you're talking about a hierarchy of responsibility. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because, our viewers, our listeners will be quick to stand up and say, well, wait a minute. Is this a complementarian point of view, or, should we subscribe to an egalitarian relationship between us?
We all know that when we see a man and a woman out, and a man, you can tell when something is right or wrong when the woman goes out in front and the man is behind, kind of like, so but when we see the man, whatever is, he acknowledges her and he treats her first, and that's what I learned, is that the power of submission, the
Mhm.
power of humility. The Bible says you humble yourself and he'll exalt you. So I had to get to the place where I said, I don't have to do this. I'm gonna let you do this, and you're gonna put me where I'm supposed to be. I had to give up my ego in this. And because Angela was watching me to see if I was the man that I said I was.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, can you let her be her and let that be okay? Because if I do, she'll turn around eventually and give me what I need,
Yeah. Yeah.
the respect that men crave,
Yeah.
that we crave, that respect. But that you're not going to get that respect until you give it.
Right. Right. That's the law of
I'm
reciprocity. Right.
reciprocity. I'm not going to get it from her because she's watching me.
Yeah.
She was watching me for 3 years to see if I was, yeah, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, huh? That's what you said. But when the rubber meets the road, ha, thought so, uh-huh.
I
And that's what I got.
I find that women naturally submit to good leadership, to strength, to consistency, to maturity, to decorum. When a man models these things, it's much easier for a woman to submit to that leadership.
But we have to get to the place where we're ready. And if you're not mature enough, if you're not ready for, and if you're not aware that that is part of the journey, then you will fight it. And I was saying for the longest time, I said, why do I have to be the adult? Why do I have to be the one to be the bigger person and bring things around and say I'm sorry and be and my godly counselor at the time said, Courtney, that's who you marry. She is who she is, and she's fine. She's absolutely perfect, exactly the way God brought her to you. The question is, what are you going to do about where you find yourself? You can't leave.
I have to comment on what you said. Why do I have to be the adult? I heard one man put it this way. He said, you can't act like a boy all day and then want to act like a man at night and expect to respond. I think he hit the nail on the head on that one.
There it is,
Right. A little more about Hollywood, all right? Because we talk about faith and translating faith into that environment because there's a lot of pushback, when it comes to faith and living out our faith, especially as Christians, But on the issue of race and the racial disparity in Hollywood, are you free to speak about that?
Sure. That's a question.
Yeah.
The racial disparity.
Yeah.
It's we're I think we're living in a time where there's these young filmmakers that are doing all these phones allow you to just tell your story. I was at Harvard for an arts. Angela and I were honored by the Cultural Rhythms Award, which is given out there every year for the last 38 years, and it's the first time they've honored a couple. And they honored Angela and I a couple weekends ago, and they ask us the students. I met with my sister came with me. Angela was working. My sister came with me, and my sister and I were sitting down, and there was 15 or so sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and they wanted to know what do you do in Hollywood? How do you navigate? How do you tell the story? I've said every one of you has a story to tell, and the difference between now and when I grew up is that you all can tell your own stories now. You don't have to wait for anybody to tell your story. You can take that phone or take a camera, somebody's camera, and get a bunch of your friends and your family or your cousins or who you want to do, and go tell a story. Write it down. It's so. I was sitting there with them, Pastor, and there was they're from Africa, they're from from Nigeria, they're from Ghana, they're from and they're all in. One young lady was from Ghana, but she was living in South Dakota. One lady was from Nigeria, and she grew up in a what are the folks who have buggies and Quaker. She grew up in a Quaker, environment. She's still there. Her parents are still there. They just retired, and they're retired into in that Quaker. They're not Quakers, but that's what they grew up. I said so that's a story right there. You're Nigerian and you grew up around Quakers. What was that like?
Yeah.
What is that? How have you journeyed from that to here?
Right. And there's so many platforms available for them to share their story. You're right. And we have so many individuals who become the term is influencers now just through social media. We've got a few minutes left and we got to wrap up the conversation. I got to have you back. You know that. But let's talk about legacy. All right. You've got two beautiful children and they've grown up in a very blessed environment with incredible parents. They're now venturing off into college. But as you think about legacy, what you're going to leave behind and impart to the next generation, wrap that up in 2 minutes for me.
Angela and I are blessed beyond measure. And the greatest blessing are each other, of course, but Brown and Slater. And we have poured into them. We have spent time just sharing and because they've got to go in this world and be able to navigate. We were handed an imperfect world. Watergate, Vietnam War, assassinations. That was the world we inherited. they're inheriting their world. This will be the first election cycle that they vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's imperative that they know, as Lincoln had to find out when he became president at such a time as that, every life ultimately is our moral decision. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, it is, well, what do you think about it? How are you going to grapple with the emancipation of the Negro and dealing with because you got to do one or the other. You can't have, everybody ain't gonna be happy. And so he recognized morally that this is what was right to do. And so ultimately, you've got to have a base of some sort of moral structure or spiritual structure so that when it's your time to make a decision, that you can make the right decision. And that's what we have imparted in them. And we feel confident that we've raised them so that when it's their time to take, and we've raised them to eventually take care of us.
Yeah.
So that when it's their time to make those tough decisions, they have that spiritual, that Jesus foundation to fall back on to know what to do, when to do it.
Yeah, giving them a spiritual and moral foundation. Courtney, it's been great having a conversation with you, man. I wish you all the best as you continue to do what you do so well and represent us as people of faith, as people of color, and people of spiritual and moral values. By the way, was OJ guilty?
You're very funny.
I love you, man. Hey, till next time.
I love you.
All the best, man. God bless.
That's a good one. You almost had me.
So, thank you, our listeners, for joining us today. If you like what you heard, you know the deal. Subscribe, like, share. We hope you'll join us for our next illuminating conversation right here on the A.R. Bernard Show. Of course, I'm your host, A.R. Bernard. Till next time, God bless.